Our moderators are Huzefah Haroon and Vaissnavi Shukl. I will be introducing them now. Huzefah is an architect based in Karachi, Pakistan. Her journey revolves around learning, exploration, and creating with sensitivity. She enjoys experimenting on various scales, from urban problem solving to architecture and interior spaces to product designing. Apart from designing locally, she has also worked as a project architect on various projects in India. Architect Vaissnavi Shukl is a recent graduate from the Harvard University Graduate School of Design. Her work focuses on political movements and the architectural manifestation of national identity through state-sponsored projects. Vaishnavi received her undergraduate degree in architecture from CEPT University, India, and has worked in Sri Lanka and the United States before starting her own research and design practice. Welcome, Architect Huzefah and Architect Vaishnavi. I now hand over the mic to you.
Thank you so much to all the three practices here today for see the length and breadth of your projects and the way you approach design in these varied landscapes. So I think before we get into the questions, I think it was also really interesting to see how you structured your offices and how you've been working in the in this time. Architecture, I think, is one of those professions that's so really difficult to practice in with distance and not being in the same physical space. So I think looking at how Goy architects have completely restructured that practice and work remotely and have kind of started put a benchmark to how we all should work and should collaborate on regardless of where we are. So speaking of practices, I think the first question I'll start off asking all three of you. Across practices, we see a tremendous conscious effort in, abiding by traditional local processes, whether it's through the use of building materials or in spatial organization and articulation, or even labor practices, looking at what Compartment S4 does. So my question is, what is the role of research in your approach towards architecture? So when you start working on a different site or in a new context, what does your research process look like? Or, how do you begin? I guess we'll start in the order of presentation if Zendru Goy wants to go first.
Wow, that's like, how do we start with the research? I guess when we have a project that comes to us in the first time, what we will do is we really have very in-depth conversations with the clients, as well as have an understanding of what is it that they really want to get out of the programmatic brief. I think that's the very most important thing that we need to listen to, as well as to understand what is the intent of their idea of building a space. So once they gave us all this programmatic brief, then between the team, we'll start to think about it, like, how is it that we are trying to give it this programmatic brief back to the clients? And while doing so, we need to also think about the kind of materials that we are using, as well as the kind of spatial experience that we're trying to sculpt for them. So in my practice, if let's say we are doing a lot of residential houses, sometimes the clients would like to have certain kind of ideals of living, but they may not consider certain things that that could come with what they are asking for. So we always have a very deep dialogue conversations with them before we start to solidify any programmatic briefs or any kind of a design direction. So I would say conversation is the key. That's my input. Yeah.
How about Compartment S4? I just want to give a shout out because I think everybody from Team Compartment S4 and I have spent over half a decade on the same campus. So it's nice to see everybody together on the same platform. Also to everybody who is in the audience, you can post your questions and we'll have Team B, you just screen the questions and we'll filter it out to the panelists. So please feel free to ask any questions that you might want to. Okay. Aman, Krishna, Nishita, anybody who wants to take up the answer?
Okay, I'll take up this question. So, role of research For us, research has a lot of importance in the way we practice, not only for built projects, but also for publications that we do, because basically all of the research and all of the practice that we do is constantly feeding into each other. So when we go for these workshops, we do 3-4 months of reconnaissance on site to actually understand the context, to understand local building practices, to understand what the people need and how we can provide it without, sort of imposing ourselves there. And so that is one part of research that we do. And then there's also this research that we do for the FNCs and for Unmute itself, which sort of builds into this larger idea of our practice, which is not that we just want to keep on building, but we want to sort of reflect on what we are doing and then reintegrate those ideas into our next project, so that no learning goes wasted, so that you're always evolving and using what you've learned on site, on from different people, from each other, to sort of give more value to your project. So that is how we see research. We don't see it as a different wing or a different thing. It's like it's a part of how we do our projects.
What about raw architects? What about architect Real Rich?
Okay, I think first of, I mean, it's just like 2 years ago we used a BIM, building integrated modeling, like integrate all of the details to form the grammars. So right now when we start the projects, it's not only the first beginning, it's not only the beginning again, because we have like the set of the vocabulary of the materials and the details. So by doing that, we can evaluate the projects. So I think it's involving, first is to integrate the models and keeping the things, I call it R&D. And the second step is to evaluate the details and then publish it in the manuscript of the literacy. So I think that's very important to provide a standard book for everybody inside the studio. And if it's getting done and it's created very well, it can be published with like a book. So book for the people, everybody. And it's like, there is like an economic ecosystem for the studio as well. So I think the publication will be the target of the last target. So but having the like a very healthy conversations between the drawing and the people, and then putting it on shelf inside the BIM, and then you have a 3D models and you have all of the methodology, and like a combination, you can create like the shape, the method, the grammars, the tectonics grammars. It become like and when we start the projects, we don't need to start from the zero. So I think that's the idea of to share the models to some of the people as well, not inside the people in our studio. So I think that's very important to have like a collaborative basis in terms of the professions. So that's our idea of the R&D.
Thank you, Realish. My question to all of you is about materiality, which has become a part of your philosophy in one way or the other. What led you to making this as one of the key aspects that you work with? For example, Goy Architect has used materiality in such an integral way that they research first into the materiality for the effect that they want to create. And with Compartment S4, they left the material for further exploration to the community so that they can work with it also. And Architect Real Rich is taking bamboo to an entirely new level by creating advancements into it. So what led you to making materiality the key aspect that you work with? And what was the most challenging aspect of it that you might have experienced in that regard? Architect Goy, would you like to go first?
I think I'm in a losing end. I'm always the first one to get it. Anyway, so maybe like just a story to share with everybody. I probably think it's the context that I grew up in. In Singapore, everything is pre-packaged for you. It's like delivered to your home. You can get everything nicely. You can get it from Europe. You can get it from everywhere. And you just get this beautiful material that you have no context with. In that sense that it's beautiful, it's very nicely crafted, but you can never get your hands dirty to see how does the production work. You see, you don't have that connection. So from young, I always have this like this affiliation, or even like this love for being close to the materials, to see how things are being put together, probably because of my context, whereby I never get to see it all the time. So I get to see everything placed together very beautifully. So when the opportunity came, when I could be working with Sam and Desi, she's based in Chiang Mai and she's based in Bali, where they have such rich resources in the connection to the craftsmen, then we have to jump into it and try to get our hands dirty as much as possible. And because of the way that we work, part of our pledge to each other is that we really wanted to allocate time for work in a specific time and also have time for discovery in our region. And we find that there is so much amazing materials, amazing textures that is in the region itself. And as I can see today with the projects from Compartment, as well as from Raw Architects, it's like there's really just so many amazing possibilities that is in our region itself that is really like shouting to be on the international stage, you know. So I really think that it's our duty as regional architects in this region to be able to bring up other alternative materials into the international stage. That's why we always go to visit different manufacturing plants to see how is it that is being done. And from there, try to see, is there any new modern way, or even if we just use their original way of working and manufacturing, how can we translate it into our projects? And by doing that, we will be able to give more exposure to our regional materials itself. And yeah, I guess it's just a fetish of mine to kind of like try to get as close to the manufacturing possibilities as possible. And that's why we have created the studio as it is. Yeah.
Amazing. I certainly understand your fetish for the materiality and getting so deep into it that I think all us architects want to do that. Compartment S4, would you like to comment, further elaborate on it?
Yeah, so I think for us, materiality, it started back in college. I mean, I think CEPT is a place where you sort of pushed to explore a lot of material, do a lot of hands-on work, and that is when you start realizing the importance of material in building. And then I think post graduation, when we started working in the real field, we also realized how in a country like India, the smallest of the insignificant of the material also actually makes a larger impact because it goes to the masses. So like GI sheet is something that we don't really look at as alternative or as sustainable, but actually it's the material that sort of is available to the masses, and so we started looking at it in that way, that okay, if this is what is available, how do you sort of work your way around it? So I think materiality wasn't only about these alternative materials, but also about looking at how vernacular has been defined over time, and vernacular has been sort of constantly like it needs to be sort of, it has been in flux, I think, and architects also will have to find a way to deal with the flux of the vernacular. So yeah, I think for us it's always been a back and forth of how you look at the vernacular and how you look at what's available and how you look at the economy, and together sort of build something that is that can go for the masses.
Certainly. I also agree, within the South Asian region, a material that is so common is certainly an opportunity untapped.
Exactly.
Architect Real Rich, would you like to add on to that?
I do really agree, but with the S4, what said, but the material is in the process. It's not about the identity. Materiality, if you call it identity, in Indonesia in 1998, it's like a massive disaster about the riots, about all of the prosecution of the people. And I was in the part of that kind of a turbulence in terms of the Chinese, Indonesians. A lot of people cannot, if you talk about the identity, it becomes very scary. And you neglect one part of the area, you providing the only the surfaces of the one layer of architecture. Architecture is a double blade, it's very powerful, but we need to be very careful. What I love in this the two speakers like a Goy and then S4, there is not like a one simple approach, like many things that you can put one things to another with very carefully. It's not like you will be called like a king of bricks or king of stone or a king of steels. So it's become very silly. And in the terms of this kind of like a media, like information, it's become very scary spirituality, you know. And when we become like that, I will think about what kind of ecosystem that we are dreaming. I'm dreaming about more open and more transparent and more intellectual ecosystems, not only about the selling things, but according to the understated layers of our conscious. Of course, it's a beautiful conscious. I will refer to one of our projects, you know. There is a COVID and we in a studio like a struck very bad actually. And then we try to make a projects like a chicken farms who can provide egg for the people. And we calculate the systems and it can be break-even point in the 6 months with a very correct structure system, with the architecture system finishes correct, and it could be everlasting. So I think that's one of the things that this is just one example. I think Goy has explained, and then as far as explained many social planner things that can involving architects against social agency. So I think that kind of thing also gives us jobs as an architect. So I'm well known right now as a chicken farm architect. So something like that. It's become very funny, but I think it's a very humble statement that we need to have a very solid core of the fundamental practice, like to serve people. So I think that's my call for the future reality. Thank you, Huzefah.
Thank you, Rirlich. I think you touched upon a very sensitive topic of architecture in itself, which is we have to be aware of what we're putting into the world. So even if we're changing the world by our design through chicken farms, it's something and it's a great impact eventually. So thank you. Vaishnavi, would you like to ask another question to the speakers?
Yeah, it's also really interesting, you know, when you said you don't want to identify as the king of steel or the king of glass. I'm almost taken back to that slide you had where you had the image of your father and your uncle and you had Norman Foster. And then I'm like, okay, if you do want to be the king of steel or the king of glass, your practice would probably be structured in a very different way. You know, when you work in smaller practices, you actually are personally invested in not doing certain kind of projects which are more industrialized or which look at, you know, having rather big capital gains, but you actually do take the personal time and interest in really looking at the materials, really looking at developing the grammar, as you say, or the building systems, and kind of returning to the vernacular as a part of your practice. That's not a separate effort where you go and you build in a different context and you have to create research on how do you really relate to the context, but because you're so tired, you can constantly keep doing and evolving. So I'm going to take a back seat and kind of really look at the structuring of practices in a broad sense, and now direct this question to Compartment S4, because you guys have formatted yourself and you identify as a collective which has a diverse range of interests, right? You're not only into build design, but also publications, research, kind of doing projects that also involve not only the communities that you built in, but also the academic community involving students, practitioners. And some of your projects that you actually do are self-initiated, if I can use that word, and proposed in collaboration with a lot of different government agencies and communities. Now, when you hear the word government, you kind of want to look the other way and run, because it's such a tedious project in the way that we know government projects to be running by. So this is on behalf of all the students here today, and everyone who's curious about how you approach these projects. So if anybody here wants, you know, is in their final year and wants to start a practice like you guys, how should they go about forming these coalitions and, you know, initiating these projects? What's the toolkit? What's a step-by-step process on anybody who wants to do it your way?
I can take this one. So I think the first and the most important thing that you would need is like a lot of patience and a lot of passion, because this is not something that, you know, we could do overnight. So we had this idea in our mind when we were in our pre-final and final year and thesis also, that we always wanted to do projects that would have a very large impact, and we wanted to actually basically we wanted to serve. We did not want to do projects just for a private client. and we wanted to build something that would impact a lot of people. And maybe that was the way our education, sort of architectural education, shaped us. We don't know what that was, but like all 8 of us had this thing in our mind. And in our thesis, one fine day we just decided that we wanted to do a lake redevelop. We went to ORDA, like that is the municipal governing body in Ahmedabad, and we just went there and we asked them to just give us some work. And they did not take us seriously for a very long time because we were students, but we kept on going there. Kept on pushing them, and finally we got this lake redevelopment project, which has still not come to fruition, but like let's wait and see what happens. But after that project we realized that if we really want to work in the public sector, we need to formalize, we need to sort of have um, a proper back support which will sort of guide us, and we need to have the patience to keep on working and revisiting the same project, the same people, the same community, the same government officials again and again and again, so that we can sort of build a name and a reputation for ourselves. And we had recognized that we wanted to work in the rural development sector because we realized that that is where our inputs were needed the most, and that is where most architects were not able to reach, because most architects practice in the urban sort of sector, but we realized that people who need it are more in the rural areas, and we are not able to reach them because of a lot of factors. And so we sort of developed our entire practice around this idea of working in the rural working in rural areas, and working around how we can provide them with the solutions that they need. And then we also had, because obviously you need to maintain your practice and you need to earn out of this, and so then we had to create different, we had to actually be very creative and find different ways of keeping our practice afloat, so that when this government project is going on which is not really giving us any returns, we can sustain ourselves through different avenues. And that is how all these new ideas keep on coming up, that we can with the research that we do, we can create publications out of it, or we can have some private client funding us for some of these projects. So a lot of these projects, like Vaishnavi said, you were right, they are self-initiated, but we don't fund them. We do sort of fundraising in a sense. We go to people and we actually pitch our projects to them, and we ask them to fund us and fund the project. So this is not a very straightforward, architect client relationship where the client is giving you a project and you are just designing. No, because we are actually looking for projects, we are creating those projects for ourselves, and then we are looking for people to fund us and help us build those projects. So I think one advice that all of us, or at least I would, or I think most of the people on my team would want to give, is that we should be proactive. Like, we should not sit, because no project is going to come and just fall in our laps. Like, those times are gone when there were star architects and people would go to them and give them projects. I think now the need of the hour is that we as architects, we sort of take up the challenge, because we know the problems and we know that we can do something about it. So just take it up yourselves and do it, and don't wait for anybody to come and give you the project of your life. Make the project of your life yourself. I think that is what I would like to tell everybody.
I think it's very interesting. It's basically saying find a void, be patient, find what value you can add, be proactive, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, and find something that gives you money. If you don't have money, then anything. So you have to,
like, don't wait around for somebody to give you something. Like, just make it happen for yourself.
I think if I can add to that, honestly, like, to be brutally honest, when we started, we didn't know much, and I think which worked to our advantage in some way. And I think that's the sort of naivety with which all of us start. All of us graduate being extremely naive, and we don't know much about the field. We know the architecture that we learn at the university and what is being practiced is two different things. And I think so the sort of naivety that we had sort of pushed us to explore in different directions. And yeah, so as you said, I mean, for final year students, I think it's important to just get into the field and get your hands dirty instead of waiting and being scared of something will turn up or something. I think we've made a lot of mistakes, and I think everybody does. I think it's important to do that too.
I think the bigger cherry on this cake or the bow on the present is actually knowing that if you're young, you can be stupid and you can make mistakes
Yeah.
and people will forgive you only because you're young. So just use that to your advantage. Huzefah, over to you for the next question.
Yeah, thank you, Vaishnavi. I just wanted to add what Compartment S4 shared with us. It's truly inspirational what you guys are doing. And I think the bit of naivety that you guys are using to your advantage is great. And I think all of the students can learn amazing stuff with it, because our field is a constant learning. Even with our one project to the other, it's a learning process that we go. And with each failure and success is the learning experience that we gain from it. So there's certainly an advantage that we get either with something that we succeed with or something that we learn from. Building onto which my question is now posed to Architect Real Rich, that since each project becomes a learning experience, and you've shared 3 projects with us that are based on bamboo as a significant material. So which was DP handling, Alpha Omega, and bamboo enclave. Seeing all these projects have bamboo as a primary building material, and assuming these were built one after the other, can you elaborate on some of the learnings you gained in one of the projects that you applied onto the other, or the challenges that you might have faced in one of the projects that you overcame in the next one? So would you like to share some of the experience with it with us?
Okay. First of our experiences dealing with the brick masonry technique. In, I think bamboo is only like 5% of our projects in the studio. Not many people interested in using a bamboo. Well, the potential is so great, but it's involving the industry and all of these craftsmen, which is not so easy to find a bamboo craftsman. So it's like a serendipity. I think when we first we initiate our introduction with the bamboo grammar in the Alpha Omega projects. So I think I kind of see that the one project to another project is kind of a grammar between one to another. We try to open up new challenges when we share to the people and we get the input. So that Alpha Omega project is done in 2016, and then it's finished in 2017. So that's the first part when we get the bamboo. And before that, we always introduced to the like a solid base and then not organic material. Even though we get like a wood material, but it's not fundamental. It's only like a surfaces. So we try to get the more fundamental into like a plywood and module system. I'm more into like this methodology to create like this fragment of the mapping of the grammars, like things like that. So in 2017, after we get the bamboos techniques, and after the project's finished, we don't know where to go, and we try to make a projects for them. So that's the first initial, and we got this chicken farms, and we got the exhibition, and we get the like a small B&B things. So I think we can get the continued the techniques of the craftsman, because if we focus on the bamboo, they are focusing into this handicraft, not into this architecture. But because of the Alpha Omega, we can get the research right, and if we don't get the continuation of the projects, and all of this technique we just vanish. And now we try and have a like continuation of the project into the one village in Bandung. So they kind of continuation of hiring the bamboo, even not with our project anymore. So I think that's one of the things that is involving like the relations, not only like the technique of the architecture, but trying to maintain the relation with the people that work with us. So I mean that's involving so many people, like a one village involving in Alpha Omega, involving 3 villages in the Sumedang district. And right now we can get a training for the several young people that can make bamboo's construction as well. So the project become their portfolio to sell their techniques. So I think that's the things becomes like that. It's not only like a layers of architecture only. So that's why when it's become like a design and build, and it's become quite intense and it become quite complex. So I think that's one of the things that I can share. So like a craftsman, they can sell their techniques based on the portfolio of Alpha Omega and the underlying projects. So I think that's my honest thoughts about all of these grammars. And until now, we're quite evolving, and it's still continuing and still looking forward for the collaboration with the many engineers and right now there are like two professors in Indonesia focusing in the bamboo constructions. So I feel very happy and looking forward to join the collaboration with them.
Thank you. We're also looking forward to your constant evolvement of material and understanding, because it's a learning process for us also to look at each advancement in each of the projects with you. So thank you for sharing that. Vaishnavi?
We had a long list of questions, but I think just being mindful of the time and keeping up with the conference schedule like this, we wanted to have an optimistic big question so that everybody could, you know, be wise and kind of share their philosophies here. So keeping in mind of the conference theme, which is small measures create impact, you know, what is the one thing at the core of your practice that, though kind of small in nature, contributes towards a greater impact? Now, Compartment S4 has spoken about it a little bit, but we could probably just revisit that, just as one essence of your practice that you think is kind of that game changer. How about we start with Goy Architects? You're mute.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I think that maybe that one component for ourselves is to be kinder to ourselves as designers and architects. Why I say that is that I think that with the advance of technology, it really allows us to do things a little bit more effectively and a little bit more time efficiently. So what does this mean is that it allows us time to really get back to ourselves, have some recreational times with our family, with our friends, and also like kind of have I think that this kind of slow time or slow architecture allows you to really reflect on what is it that you really want to do, what is your agency, what do you think, and how is it should be built and why it should be built. And I think that sometimes, a lot of times in our modern society, is that we are always rushing for things. We are like rushing to get things built. We are doing one project after the other project, after the other project, after the other project. And then we lose contact with all our friends and family. And we get into this silo of like working just by yourself. So I think what is very encouraging is in this panel, we see that there is really this very strong collaboration. And we see that when having strong collaboration with the community, you get to have amazing projects. And I would just end off by saying, let's just do things slightly a little bit slower and have a little bit of time for yourself to think, to reflect, so that we can be better designers for our planet. Yeah.
I think that's such a nice way to put it. You know, I had the opportunity to, you know, interact with a speaker today who was in a later session, Anna Heringer, and
yeah.
we were part of this group called Women in Design, and you know, we were talking about her practice but outside of her projects, and she talks about it the same way. I think she also says that know that you have a life outside architecture, or you kind of water that side of the garden just as much as you water your professional side of the garden.
Yeah.
So this is also a plug to just everybody who is attending the conference to just stay tuned throughout the day, because we have some stellar speakers coming up. Yeah, I would love to hear from Compartment S4 as well. You know, what is that one thing with a small measure big impact?
Yeah, I'll take this one. We would all generally speak that not just looking at yourself as designers or architects, but constantly changing your roles in different ways, in different things, and in the way you approach the project. Sometimes becoming just conveyor for the community, or becoming activist, or becoming someone like a mason. So, and also be humble in your small little way, and not think about, which will also help you grow as a human being, and therefore as whatever you do. So that's what I'll say, like keep it small, keep it humble, keep it true. Yeah, that's it.
Architect Real Rich, what's your big idea?
Honestly, my wife said that I don't have a time to think other thing other than architecture.
Guilty.
That's my guilty feeling. I always think every day, every time architecture, every day I think about architecture. And my honest thinking that probably the one of the things that we need to be, probably one of the agency that I can say that, you know, that there is like the gap between the things. What do you want to fill within that gap? Gaps could be the capital, gap could be the knowledge, gap could be the technology. So I think the being a harmony, meaning that we need to like try to fill in the gap. I think that kind of make us more harmony with the people, with the substance of harmony. For example, like the technology integrating the future of architecture, probably the integrating the many elements of the actors in Indonesia with a very humble things, not into the system, but to create a new things, innovations. I think to have you know that there is like a gap, big gap in the society is very important to have a conscious discourse inside yourself. So other than things that I think I need to escape from the architecture. That's my honest thing that I always think have like a very contingency feeling that always insecure of that gap that I think it's make us feel very human. Think about the other people as a persons. So become architect meaning to be human, right? Not just follow the whatever things ready. I think this that I can learn from today's session. So I say thank you, and all of the speakers for the very humble input presentations.
Thank you. After this amazing insight by all of you, it has become really overwhelming to summarize the amazing work that you all have started. To Architect Goy, thank you for showing us how important it is to question what we get is not what we should settle with. So in case a material isn't available as per our imagination, we can always create it. To Compartment S4, a team of passionate young architects who are pushing the limits and paving the road for themselves is a courageous aspect that you guys are doing. And kudos to you and good luck for the future endeavors. And architect Realridge, who refuses to settle on one material and constantly questioning the way we build. It is your small measures that are leading to great impacts. And we wish you all the best for your future endeavors. And we look forward to all your works that you guys would be putting into this world. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.